So like our telomeres are shortening, our sirtuin genes aren't activated. We have methylation errors in our DNA, and all of this is happening. And then we have a much higher likelihood towards almost every disease. And so all of this is happening with mitochondrial dysfunction comes metabolic dysfunction. So, I mean, that's what's at cost here, or what's at play when we don't have enough of that energy. So mitochondria are just so critical to our health, our well-being, and our overall energy for life. That's why I talk about the energy formula.
You're listening to the Live Life Longer show with Dan Voss, where we discuss longevity, health optimization, aging well, having more energy, and living a happier, healthier life. In this week's episode, my guest is Shawn Wells, the world's leading nutritional biochemist and expert on health optimization. He has formulated over 500 supplements, food, beverages, and cosmeceuticals, and patented 10 novel ingredients, and is now known as the Ingredientologist, the scientist of ingredients. Formerly a chief clinical dietitian with over a decade of clinical experience, he has counseled thousands of people on innovative health solutions such as keto, paleo, fasting, and supplements. He has also personally overcome various health issues, including Epstein-Barr Virus, chronic fatigue syndrome, fibromyalgia, depression, insomnia, obesity, and a pituitary tumor. As a world-renowned thought leader on mitochondrial health, he has been paid to speak on 5 different continents. His expertise can help any health-conscious individual to better manage stress and experience higher performance and more energy through utilizing his practical research-backed solutions. Before we get into today's episode, I'd like to talk about Kion Aminos. It's something I've been taking now for a little while to boost my performance, my physical performance, and recovery. It's formulated specifically to enhance athletic performance by delivering a full EAA profile directly to the muscles and bloodstream within 30 minutes of ingestion. They can be used to fuel long workouts, improve muscle retention, and increase your mental focus during training. Some other uses of Kion Aminos is better sleep, better recovery, muscle maintenance, appetite regulation, fast, clean energy. It can support your fasting efforts and lifestyle and improve your cognitive performance. To get 15% off your order of Kion Aminos, visit getkion.com. That's getkion.com/Dan Voss. That's DANVOSS. You can enter my name, Dan Voss, DANVOSS, at checkout, the code Dan Voss, for 15% off your order of Kion Aminos, any of their supplements, and their delicious coffee. Shawn, welcome to the Live Life Longer show.
Thanks for having me on, brother. I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, this is good. I actually first came across you and your profile on Clubhouse. I've been on there for almost a month now, and you were one of the first people I kind of joined in on the rooms that you're talking in, and I'm really loving not just the app, but the connection that I'm having there, the conversations that are being had there, and everything I'm learning. It's been a lot of fun.
Awesome, man. Yeah, I've really enjoyed Clubhouse. I have my name on there is at Biohacking. And interestingly, I actually put it in wrong. So like that was like the handle I wanted, but then it accidentally like had me put that in as my actual name. So if you look me up, like if whenever I'm in these rooms, you know, everyone else has their first name, like Dan, Mike, Vanessa, at
Yep.
Biohacking.
Yeah.
So
No,
you can find me on there. It's pretty easy. I'm at Biohacking, but yeah, it's been really fun. I enjoy Clubhouse.
definitely. I remember when I first popped into the app, and I think I typed in biohacking because that's something I like to focus on a lot with my podcast and just trying to find different people in the field. So I think I typed in biohacking and came across your profile. So my first thought was like, this is genius. This guy's gonna be found very quickly for anyone that's interested in that area.
Yeah, exactly. But and they won't let me change it back. So they only let you change
Really?
it once, and I changed it accidentally to that when I was changing my name to
Uh-huh.
at Biohacking for a handle. So I can't
Wow.
change it, but it's all good. I actually
Yeah.
like being in the rooms and people are like, the guy with the orange head that's at biohacking,
Yep.
like that's me.
Hey, I mean, it makes you stand out, and
That's right.
like you said, most people they have their first name on there, so they come
I'm
across biohacking, and they're going to remember you.
I'm disruptive. That's it.
That's great. Cool. So obviously there's so much that we're going to cover in our conversation today.
Yeah.
You're one of the people that's in the health field that, you can have a conversation on so many different topics in terms of, nutrition, fasting, supplements, exercise, sleep, biohacking. I mean, there's so much there. And that's pretty cool. Most people, they might start off with one area of expertise and then they kind of branch off. I understand that's pretty much what you have done here. But it's exciting to have a conversation around so many different topics. So let's get into it. I understand you like to consider yourself an ingredientologist, a scientist of ingredients. Tell us and kind of walk us a little through that background you have when it comes to supplements and ingredients.
Yeah, I've been a formulator for about 20 years. Like the bio said, I was a chief clinical dietitian for about 10 years, but I was formulating on the side for companies for a while on as side hustle. And then eventually I got full-time work with the company Dymatize and then eventually BioTrust. And then I became fully autonomous with my company Zone Halo, and it's been really good. I've formulated over 500 supplements, like food, beverage, cosmeceutical, pills, powders, capsules, like anything you can think of, like brownies, cookies, like with protein and protein powders, pre-workouts, ready to drink energy drinks. I've also patented a ton of ingredients now. Like I'm working on several more with a partner in China. He has a 400,000 square foot facility, over 100 scientists, and I'm the chief science officer working on all these cool new ingredients. It's kind of a dream job for a nerdy nerd like me. So that's exciting. And like you might know some of my ingredients like T-creen and dynamine. They're in a lot of like energy drinks, pre-workouts, and fat burners. I think probably more than 500. There's 20 studies between them. So really cool ingredients. I have a form of berberine called dihydroberberine that's more active. I have a patent on active isomer ketones and just a lot of stuff coming and a lot of stuff out there. So it's like I'm
Mm.
literally living my dream. It was a dream of mine to be this formulator that stood out, and now my name that I'm known as in the industry is the world's greatest formulator. I call myself the ingredientologist, but I get called in the industry that, and it's amazing. Like it's such a blessing to be known as someone who's really good at what they do.
Yeah, I mean, to have that kind of persona or be viewed in the industry in that way is special. What is it about? Obviously, you're a science guy, and with the ingredients, you've always been into that. But what was it that got you and drew you to something so niche down as ingredients?
You know, it was really like I spent a lot of my life when I was younger, like obese and bullied, and had a chaotic childhood, and was definitely overlooked by the girls, was laughed at by, the guys, didn't get to play the sports and all those kinds of things. And it took its toll on me. I became good at being the class clown and being self-deprecating and all that, is to evade all those
Hmm.
kinds of hurt feelings and the depression I was going through. And it was in college that I started like working out and like started using creatine and protein and like hitting some of the weights. And like, every time I'd go to the gym, I was jumping up to a new set of dumbbells and I was like, this is cool. And I was reading the magazines, Muscular Development and Iron Man, and I read a book called Optimum Sports Nutrition by this guy, Dr. Michael Colgan. And he was like combining different amino acid blends for like his Olympic athletes and, increasing GH and all this stuff. And it's just so cool to me. And I went to my doctor in between my sophomore and junior year of college. And I was telling him all about this passion, this dream I had. And just thinking of it as like kind of like a nebulous, thing that could be like a hobby.
Hmm.
And instead he drew out this lifeline for me between 20 and 80 and said, why not be happy between here and here? And I was like, oh my God. Like, this guy had no business saying any of this to me. Like, I mean, he's just my doctor.
Yeah.
And we didn't have like a, mentor type relationship or whatever. But for him to tell me that was just so powerful. Um, and it really changed my life path. So, I mean, the
Yeah.
words can mean everything, and that gave me permission to, I mean, I was in business school at the time, and that's what
Hmm.
everyone told me to do, just go do business. And like, when you
Yep.
don't know what you're doing with your life, you're like, okay, I'll do what everyone's telling me to do.
Mm.
But then when I had this, it was like, wow, that's something I'm really passionate about and I could be
Yeah.
good at. And so I did finish up business school, but then my goal was to go get my master's at UNC Chapel Hill. I'm actually wearing this shirt
Nice.
right now. It wasn't even, I didn't even think about that. But what's funny is the flip side of the power of words. It was going to take me about 2 years, 26 credit hours of sciences a semester to
Yep.
get into Chapel Hill from a business school. And I went to UNC Greensboro. My parents were down in North Carolina at the time, and I knew I could do in-state, and I was hoping to get into Chapel Hill.
Hmm.
And I went to the guidance counselor, and I told him all this stuff that I've been like working on for 2 years while I was at Babson, this business school, and just believing in. And he laughed at me. He said, "You're a business student. You'll fail, and you'll fail miserably, and you're not even in that good a shape." And
Wow.
I almost committed suicide that night with alcohol and pills. I felt like somebody ripped my dream away from me, everything I've
Yeah.
been working for. And, luckily I didn't kill myself. Luckily, it actually strengthened my resolve after that. I thought about that guy every day in more of a hateful way, not
Hmm.
necessarily a healthy way, but it actually did propel me, because when people were like, hey, we're going out to party, we're going out to this bar, this restaurant, want to go? I'd be like, no, man, I'm on my grind.
Yep.
And so those are like two very different voices I had in my life that kind of set out my formulator path, if you will.
Hmm.
And both had a huge impact. And while I was at Chapel Hill, I did get in, by the way, and got straight A's while I was at UNC Greensboro. So that guy was flat wrong.
Yep.
And don't let anyone take your dreams away from you. Um, but while I was at Chapel Hill, I ended up getting really sick with autoimmune issues. I was pushing
Mm.
really hard with work and school. And I ended up getting Epstein-Barr, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, Hashimoto's. And that's when I almost committed suicide again, because I was
Mm.
stuck in bed. I was in pain. I was inflamed for 6 months. I thought my life was over. And again, I wouldn't get
Wow.
my degree, and I wouldn't be a purposeful person out in the world, like with a real job that I had been working on. I was just going to be someone who sleeps in bed in pain all day.
Mm.
And I stumbled into the ketogenic diet. I was reading a couple of books and looking at some forums at the time. I was looking at The Body Opus by Dan Duchesne, which is a bodybuilding keto book. And then there was a book by Lyle McDonald, The Ketogenic Diet for the Practitioner.
Mm.
And both of those very different perspectives, but I was learning about keto through those, and then going on some message boards and seeing how it helped with autoimmune issues. It helped me dramatically. Then I started to shift my supplementation to immunity, away from just sports nutrition. And it's kind of evolved for me ever since. And probably about 8 years ago was another wake up call when I had a brain tumor. And again, that was when I was at Dymatize now as their formulator, director of R&D. I was working over 80 hours a week. The
Hmm.
goal was to sell the company to another big company. It eventually sold to Post Foods for 425 million. But I was like, working literally 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day, pushing my body too much. And so I've had like some hard health lessons along the way, like even from
Sure.
someone in my position and knowledge,
Hmm.
where I learned about self care. and how important that is. And like, you can't just keep pushing and grinding and working and going
Yep.
without some self-care, some self-love. So that is my story of
100%.
how I became the formulator.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. It's not necessarily easy to talk about that and share it, but I appreciate your courage to publicly share that with with me and my audience. I think there's something special too about, it's hard lessons to learn along the way, but I think you mentioned like some of those health lessons that you learned on your own. Obviously, it's better to learn from other people, but sometimes you just have to learn on your own and face that adversity, get punched in the gut, and learn that lesson the hard way, and realize, there's a different path. And that sounds like what you chose, was that you weren't going to succumb to depression or any of those diseases, or some guy telling you that you couldn't do it. You looked at it in a different outlook, and obviously is showing in many great ways now. So kudos to you.
Thank you. Thank you, brother.
Yeah. So I understand you have a new book coming out. I believe in April. Is that right? In another month or so?
Yes, that is correct. The Energy Formula is coming out April 1st. It's a biohacking book, and it's actually an acronym for experiments, like as in biohacking, epigenetics, blood work,
Mm-hmm.
all that kind of stuff. Nutrition, like keto, paleo,
Yep.
Mediterranean, carnivore, vegan, etc. Exercise, so high intensity interval training, blood flow restriction, intraset stretching, all that
Mm.
kind of stuff, natural movement. Um, then routines, so circadian rhythm, morning and nighttime routines,
Mm.
growth, like as in growth mindset. And then I get into fasting and nootropics and other things. And then lastly, your tribe, community connection, blue zones, all that kind of stuff. So it's a full spectrum of biohacking. And in each chapter, I have these formulators corners where I get into the doses, brands, forms of all the supplements you need, and then resource hacks where I get into apps and devices and techniques, all these things that you can use. The book is chock full. There's over 60 diagrams in full color, over 100 scientific citations. There's surveys that can assess your progress as you go. It's literally it's so amazing. Like, I'm so proud of it.
Yeah.
It's 400 pages, and what's cool, you can literally get it for 99 cents right now in the pre-order as an ebook. I have the hardcover for $39.99, but it cost me $39.80 to make it because I went full color with really nice binding and pages and all the stuff. And then I got the Audible coming out in a couple months, but
Cool.
yeah, I'm really proud of it. And if you go to energyformula.com, you get a free fasting for energy guide. You get a hidden chapter, and you get this book, like I said, for 99 cents, which is, I think, a heck of
Sweet. Yeah, that's awesome. I'm going to be checking that out. I'll have that all linked up too in the description, show notes, for those that are interested. First off, it sounds like an awesome book. Everything you just read off there, it covers so many topics that I love talking about. A lot of the things that I've kind of heard you in different rooms on Clubhouse, and just a lot of great material there. So let's get started with on the energy piece with mitochondrial health. How is energy created with mitochondrial health, and how do we get more of it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Most of us are in a state of insufficient cellular energy, which is an acronym known as ICE. And we just don't make enough of that cellular currency for energy called ATP, adenosine triphosphate. And
Mm-hmm.
right, and you might remember, like back in middle school or high school, that you had biology with the powerhouse of the cell was the mitochondria, right? And it
Mm-hmm.
made ATP to power the body, right? And so that's what the mitochondria is. Now, there is potentially a lot more than one in certain cells. Energy dependent, like highly energy dependent cells, like heart cells or brain cells, they might have up to 5,000 mitochondria in one cell. So it's there's actually a lot more mitochondria than you might think in the body, and it's super critical. And when we're not making enough energy and we're in that ice state, then there's problems that come with that. we feel chronic fatigue, we feel brain fog, we have hypertonic muscles. We're sore all the time. We're getting into states of chronic inflammation, oxidation, and glycation, blood sugar damage. And we're actually rapidly aging. We're aging faster biologically than
Yep.
chronologically. So like our telomeres are shortening, our sirtuin genes aren't activated. We have methylation errors in our DNA, and all of this is happening. And then we have a much higher likelihood towards almost every disease.
Mm.
And so all of this is happening with mitochondrial dysfunction comes metabolic dysfunction. So, I mean, that's what's at cost here, or what's at play when we don't have enough of that energy. So mitochondria are just so critical to
Mm.
our health, our well-being, and our overall energy for life. That's why I talk about the energy formula.
Yeah, very cool. Do you have anything? Obviously, this is a very broad question, but do you have any kind of quick tips or hacks for us to improve our mitochondrial health? And then I know you mentioned telomeres, what we can be doing to improve the health of our telomeres as well.
Yeah, 100%. So with mitochondria, there's several things. One you might have heard of with cold plunges, cold showers. Obviously, that's going to help with mitochondrial health. And then you
Mm-hmm.
might have heard about, even better, is contrasting, where you're going from one extreme to another. The
Yeah.
delta, the temperatures between the two are even greater. So going from a hot sauna to a cold plunge, things like that,
Mm.
like the old polar bear club where these guys would go from the sauna to like a little hole in the ice kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's that kind of idea. That's an even greater delta. And we're used to being thermoregulated in our society, but that's not normal for our bodies,
Mm.
that we're always at 68 to 72 degrees. Like we
Yeah.
have
Right.
very little, like, thermal difference going on there. Like where in history, we might have, gone from really extreme cold temperatures to really extreme heats. And, even just day to night, sometimes we would experience that. So,
Yep.
that's one thing that's going to, this stuff that I'm talking about is resilience. So it's actually hormetic stressors. Hormesis is challenging the body and creating that adaptation through the agitation. It's kind of like the obstacle is the way for the body.
Mm-hmm.
There's the growth mindset that's very similar, like that stoic mindset, where the obstacle is the way. It's very
Yep.
similar to your body. That there's a bell curve of eustress and distress, where there's good stress and bad stress, and you have a Goldilocks zone in the middle of that bell curve of like the ideal amount of stress that helps grow your stress bucket, allostatic
Mm-hmm.
load. It's called allostatic load. So that stress bucket can actually grow, and your capacity to deal with stress can grow. But if you do too much at once, it overflows.
Mm.
And then it becomes a distress.
Yep.
So you only want to have eustress, a positive stress, and think of it as like that good friend that challenges you. Come on, buddy, or the guy at the gym that's spotting you. Come on, come on. That's
Yep.
eustress. So that's that scenario. So, and there's times when you stack all these things that a eustress might turn into a distress. Like if you were
Mm.
sick, it's probably not a good idea to go do the cold plunge.
Yeah.
But there are supplements that help with mitochondrial health as well. Some of my favorites, I mean, you might think right off the bat, things that increase NAD, like NMN is one of my favorites. I like it a lot better than NR.
Mm-hmm.
It just seems to be more effective. Things like PQQ and CoQ10, those help with the electron transport chain. Um, but some of my favorite ones really is the polyphenols.
Mm.
And they're a group of compounds that are xenohormetics that actually protect the plants. They protect, like the grapes, for example, that resveratrol. And the more
Yep.
dry the climate, the more hot the sun, the arid the soil, like it actually makes that plant tougher, and they have more of the polyphenols. So you actually do want to get like wine or whatever from
Mm-hmm.
the tougher climates. That's where like that dry farm wine kind of thing comes in.
Yep.
But a lot of these things are caloric restriction mimetics, and they activate the sirtuin genes because it's that hormesis idea. So these compounds are some of the most famous compounds in food, where you have like a lot of blue zone foods revolve around
Hmm.
these, e.g. CG in green tea, chlorogenic acid in coffee, transresveratrol in wine, pterostilbene in blueberries, quercetin in onions and apples, apigenin in parsley. And so what's cool is most of these things increase NAD levels. And as we age, NAD gets lower and lower and lower.
Hmm.
Another thing that's happening is as we age is NAD gets consumed faster and faster and faster. So it's a double whammy. And it's actually
Mm.
consumed faster from CD38, which is the enzyme NADase that breaks down NAD. So what you want to do is find ways to boost NAD and also inhibit CD38 so NAD hangs around longer. And
Got it.
NAD is part of that Krebs cycle, the citric acid cycle, that crank
Hmm.
that's creating ATP. And one of the last stops, you have NAD to NADH ratio that's really critical for creating energy and for vitality.
Mm.
So we found that NAD, boosting NAD cellularly, is really a way to enhance health and longevity. And so
Mm.
you can do that with like IV NAD. That's probably the best way.
Yep.
Makes you feel nauseous for 3 hours. It's not the best feeling thing. There is intranasal NAD, which I don't have a ton of experience with, but that could be a good way to deliver NAD. But
Hmm.
orally, NAD isn't going to work that well. So that's where things
Yeah.
like NMN might be better. And then taking some of these other ingredients could definitely support that, like the polyphenols. And there's a couple polyphenols that actually do work on the other side of the equation I was talking about with inhibiting CD38, like quercetin and apigenin. They
Mm.
actually do that. So they're doing the double whammy. And fisetin has actually been shown to be potentially the best when they looked at 10 different polyphenols. Okay, so fisetin is from strawberries, it's polyphenol. And there was a study that looked at 10 different polyphenols, and that one actually came out the best in terms of efficacy for anti-aging, increasing NAD, et cetera. So that's one I would look at. So probably my two favorites for one, increasing NAD is fisetin,
Hmm.
and then for two, inhibiting CD38 is probably apigenin. So those are probably like the two rock stars. You've heard a lot about
Yeah.
resveratrol and pterostilbene and quercetin and all these, but I really feel like those are the two rock stars right now is fisetin and apigenin.
For anyone that's listening that's interested in those, obviously there's so many places to get different supplements. Where would you steer somebody that is just hearing about this, or they want to learn more about it in terms of applying it into their daily routine?
Yeah, you're right. There's a number of companies that have these. I get one company that just comes to mind right now that has good prices and quality is Doctor's Best.
Hmm.
There's really high-end companies like Thorne and Pure Encapsulations and Life Extension Foundation, and some of those companies. They're definitely top tier with their quality control.
Sure.
Now, there's some companies that have really good quality control and are lower price, like Now and Jarrow and
Hmm.
some of those companies. But right off the top of my head, I know Doctor's Best has some of the ingredients I'm talking about at really good prices and good quality control. So
Cool.
maybe that one.
Yeah, that's good to know. I also like that you were talking about how a lot of these nutrients are meant to be found in foods, and that's where we should start is with our nutrition. And then the supplements are meant to be exactly that. They supplement your diet. And I think we're starting to get away from that a little bit in the whole like biohacking world, as everyone wants to talk about supplements, which is great. Obviously, that's your line of expertise, but I appreciate you saying that you need to first look at your diet and get that
For
right
sure.
before you look into the supplements.
For sure. And when you look at the blue zones, and I can get into, there's a lot more to blue zones
Mm,
than diet.
yep.
But when you look at the blue zone diets, these compounds tend to be high in their diets.
Yeah.
With Mediterranean and with Sardinia or Korea, like it's a lot of these things like the wine and the green tea and the certain vegetables, etc. So yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Before we go further into nutrition, since we're now segueing into that, I do want to cover a little bit more on the idea of hormesis and thermogenesis and cold exposure. It's something I'm very much getting into this past year, specifically with Wim Hof method. I'm sure I know you have heard of it, and I know a lot of my listeners have. For me, there's so many benefits from it. Like I don't even know where to begin. I will say one really cool thing in the past year, and obviously we're in a global pandemic where a lot of people are staying inside. We're not going into big groups. People are hopefully, more conscious of washing their hands and not hugging and shaking hands and all of that. So there's a lot of factors for why I have not gotten sick this past year. I haven't even had a cold, and pre-COVID, I would have a cold, once a month, maybe, several times a year. And when I started doing, that's where I'm trying to pinpoint like where this, what's the reason behind me not getting sick? Is it because of everything that we've done, all of the precautions we've had with COVID, with just like better hygiene? Or is it also because I'm focusing on better sleep. I'm doing cold showers every day. I'm upping my vitamin D intake and a number of other supplements. So do you have any thoughts there on what might be a factor? It could be all of those. It could be one. I don't know if you have any thoughts on what could be preventing me from just getting a common cold.
It's that through line that I was talking about before that's in my book. And the through line of the book is resilience, is being harder to kill.
Yeah.
And you do that by staying in that area of eustress where you're constantly challenging your body in a variety of ways, but not getting to the point of distress. It's kind of like the idea of in exercise physiology, the term overtraining. There's also another term, just under recovered.
Yep.
And so you have to look at it as like it's a series of stressors, but then recovery, stress, recovery, stress, recovery. And you don't want to overstress your body, but you have to find that Goldilocks zone that I was talking about. So that can happen with, with intermittent fasting and extended fasting. That can happen with the ketogenic diet and having metabolic flexibility. That can happen with, like you said, the cold plunges and the hot saunas, and it can happen with breath work, holotropic, Wim Hof, whatever. Like all this stuff is a stressor, but a good stress when done in the right amount, in the right way. And that's you're doing it. So you're doing the the sleep routine is critical too.
Yep.
Having circadian rhythm alignment. Like one of the things that's actually ideal that I go through in the book is Dr. Sachin Panda's data of eating during that daylight window. That's actually pretty critical because we're not meant to be eating like late at night, and we're not meant to obviously be looking at the blue screens, late at night, and we're not meant to be in our artificial boxes with the artificial floor, with the artificial realities that we're watching on the artificial screen, with the artificial light, and the whole thing like that we think is reality and normal. We're meant to be dealing with temperatures outside. We're meant to be breathing fresh air. We're meant to be grounding with bare feet on the earth and getting the geomagnetic forces, the ions. We're meant to be in that circadian rhythm, the sleep-wake cycle of daylight and then night. We're meant to have that. And right now we're like staying up till, midnight with this artificial light, and we're just watching someone else's existence and walking around on carpets and breathing recycled air and functioning at 68 to 72 degrees.
Yep.
And it's a very odd artificial existence. And, we're eating ultra processed food that's manipulated with high bliss point by food engineers, where you literally have like these dopamine triggered serotonin food gasms because they're manipulating these foods. And that is highly atypical to the food that we used to eat.
Yep.
And then the food availability is so extreme now, like that we can eat all day long. And it used to be hard to find food, to get food, to hunt food, to prepare food, to grow food. All of that was difficult. We used to go days without eating. We didn't call it fasting back then. We called it starving.
Yep.
Like all of this was harder before. We were much more resilient before than we are now. we're becoming very easy to kill.
Yeah.
So that's the problem, is we lack the resilience. So finding these biohacks can help us become more resilient and more resistant to those pathogens like you're talking about.
Yeah.
And honestly, one of the things I think about is, this might sound crazy, but like when I'm healthy and happy, I'll eat food off, if it falls on the floor, I'm going to eat it. Like
Yep.
if I'm around someone coughing or sneezing, I don't care.
Yep.
My immune system needs to go to the gym.
Mm,
My immune system needs that workout that like little
exactly.
kids tend to have, that dogs have, that people in other countries have, but we no longer have, because we're trying to make everything sterile, and we're scared of pathogens, and we have fear, which makes our immune systems even lower.
Yeah.
And then with all the sterilization and all the antivirals and all this stuff, our immune system sucks.
Yeah.
That's why people are getting sick. And it is absolutely important to keep your immune system elevated by challenging it. Again, that harder to kill, challenge it with eustress.
Yep.
Now, if I was sick, I wouldn't jump in the cold lake. If
Right.
I was sick, I wouldn't be around someone coughing or sneezing.
Yeah.
It's
It's more of a
totally different.
preventative measure. Yeah. Yeah. You're
Mhm.
speaking my language here on everything you just said there. That was actually one of the things I was a little bit concerned about in the beginning of lockdowns was, is like the opposite of what we want to be doing. And I understand, we needed lockdowns for obvious reasons, but it's also kind of the opposite of what we really need for our health. We're staying indoors, we're not around people. Now you're talking about mental health issues, and I can go down a rabbit hole of all of that. But you were talking about getting outside in nature is super important. That's something I've really been enjoying in the last year, is going out for walks and paying attention to the sounds of the birds and just the sunlight hitting your skin.
Yeah,
You know,
that's presence, and that's mindfulness.
mindfulness. Yeah.
That's living in the here and now, and that's so critical too. Like that's something we've gotten away from too, is when we get our notifications, when we watch commercials, when there's all these things on our phone, on our TV, like all these things going on, and people calling us and emails. We're distracted constantly. Everyone
Yep.
wants our attention because
Mm,
we're a commodity, and they want us to buy.
yep.
And meanwhile, we're not present anymore. We're not mindful anymore. And that comes at a cost to our immune system and to our health, to our well being. And so, and that's actually like something I struggled with a lot of my life, is that, with depression and grinding and
Hmm.
achievement, I was going out for slow sacrifice. I was like heads down for years, trying to level up and get somewhere to eventually be happy or be loved. And then
Yeah.
at other points, I'm doing biohacks for, quick changes and cutting out this part of my body that I hate or need to fix. That mindset is not healthy. Like, I am beautiful, I am great, I am happy, I am healthy now.
Mm,
If I let myself be, I can be vibrant and resilient and be mindful in the middle, and not looking for quick hacks and not looking for years of sacrifice. I can be mindful and present in the here and now, and that is so much better. And I'm
yes.
not saying biohacks are bad by any means, but you need to build it on the base of that self-love, that vibrance for life, that enjoyment of life. It's like
Mm,
happiness isn't, happiness, sexiness, success. Like they're not places that you get to. They're places that you just are and you
yep.
choose to be. There's no destination. There's no like, oh, I'll be happy when. I'll be sexy if I lose 50 pounds. I'll be happy when I get $1 million. I'll be successful when I have 1 million followers. You're successful now if you want to be. Like that's how
Mm,
you get there. You can be happy now if you want to be. You can be sexy now if you want to be. You all know people that are successful that are making, 5 figures. People that are sexy that are like 300 pounds. People that are, um, happy that, don't have cars and houses and whatever.
yes.
It's all a choice. It's all a state of mind. And that's part of that growth chapter too.
So good. I had Dr. Frank Lipman on my podcast a few weeks back, and we were talking about much of what you cover, and similar topics in terms of aging well and longevity and biohacking, and he was talking about how, especially in the biohacking world, we tend to get so caught up in all of these hacks, do this, do that, pay attention to these biometrics and this data, and we have all of our devices. And he says sometimes that just gets too stressful. We end up doing more damage than we're trying to do good, by stressing out about all of this. And again, you and I both, we love science and data and all of that. But he was talking about, the importance of gratitude and having purpose in life, especially later in your later years, to have purpose on, waking up and having something that you really enjoy and want to accomplish for that day. Kind of those intangibles, right? The idea of compassion and forgiveness. Think about how many people out there, and we've all been there. We're all human. I'm guilty of this myself. You hold a grudge, and next thing you know, years go by, you haven't talked to an old friend because you got in a fight, way back over nothing, and now you're just letting that fester up all these years. So it's those intangibles that we often don't think about.
Yeah, agreed.
Cool. So I'm not even sure where we were there. I want to cover a little bit more. One other thing that I was thinking about, I just learned the other day, Rich Roll, he's got a pretty popular podcast. He sleeps outside. He's in Southern California, so he's able to do this with his climate. He sleeps outside in like a canopy every night just to be out in nature, get that fresh air. You were talking about circadian rhythm. I just got a dog back in October, and she's up early. Now I'm getting up around like 5:30, 6 o'clock, where usually I'd wake up at like 7:30 or 8 and the sun has already risen. So now we're up when the sun is getting up, and we're going to bed around 9 o'clock when the sun's going down. Obviously in the winter it goes down earlier, but I'm noticing better sleep and just feeling better throughout the day because I'm getting that sleep in that normal circadian rhythm like you talked about, that time that our ancestors would go to sleep.
Yeah, there's actually data on like work shift displacement syndrome, like with people that are night shift workers, and like they live 30% less long. I mean,
Wow.
it's dramatic, and the diseases go up 3 to 5-fold for like diabetes and cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease. So it's serious. Like your body does not deal with that well. There are different chronotypes, and some people like to kind of cling on to that and say like I'm one of those night owls and all that kind of stuff. But by and large, the data seems to point pretty heavily to we're meant to wake with the sun and go to sleep when it's night. I mean,
Yep.
it's just that simple. And we're not a nocturnal creatures. We don't have night vision, and that's why it's not typical for us to be running around at night or eating late at night or any of those things. That wouldn't be feasible outside. That wouldn't be feasible in nature.
Yep.
It's feasible when we have a refrigerator and we have artificial light and we're, have warmth and we're just watching TV.
Yep.
But that's not what we've evolved for over millions of years.
Exactly. That's good stuff. Let's switch gears here a little bit. We were talking about nutrition. I want to cover fasting, and I want to hear more about, I know you've talked about keto. You've gone through the keto experience in paleo. My big thing is there seems to be, I'm kind of putting you on the spot here, but there seems to be so much conflicting advice when it comes to diet. When people say keto is the way, or go all carnivore, or vegans tend to say only veganism. What would you say to people listening right now that are struggling to find the right, I don't even like to use the word diet, but the right nutrition for them, that seem to be getting all this conflicting advice on eat only meat, eat only vegetables and greens? What are your thoughts on all that?
I think by and large, it's all yes. Like there's like I did a podcast once called Death to Keto, and even though I've been known for 20 years to be a keto guy, because people go straight into keto and then they have the same habits that they had, where they're doing dirty keto, lazy keto, eating junk food and like overeating and trying to figure out net carbs, and they're doing tons of sugar alcohols and all this stuff that's not necessarily healthy. So what I talk about, in the book is learning how to, get rid of sugar first, detox from that because you're addicted to it. Literally, it's
Mm,
feeding the candida in your gut. You're addicted to sugar, and your brain has like a cocaine type orgasm again with dopamine
yep.
from the sugar. And then next, removing ultra processed, high bliss point foods in general. So getting rid of the artificial flavors, colors, sweeteners, getting rid of all the GMOs, antibiotics, et cetera, hormones, and getting back to whole food.
Mm,
Then let's add in some type of movement regularly, especially like a postprandial stroll. Like, so having like walking
yep.
after your meal, that's huge for your blood sugar and insulin. And then lastly, doing some kind of intermittent fasting, just going some period of time without eating. And that
Mm,
includes snacking. So just doing two or, if you need to, at first, 3 meals a day, but no snacks. And then do a 12 and 12, and then a 16 and 8. And then maybe you can try 20 and 4, where you can do, extended fasts. But, it starts with just getting control on your willpower to not eat.
yep.
And so that's really important. Then you can start getting into, the ketogenic diet,
Mm,
cyclical targeted keto. You can talk about metabolic flexibility, et cetera. But it all starts with whole food. And that paleo kind of whole 30 type diet where you're removing some of the inflammatory grains and things like that, that makes sense too.
mm-hmm.
So just eating whole food and removing some of the things that we weren't probably evolved for. And then lastly, um, then you can move into even carnivore and vegan if you want.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really care either way whether you're eating all meat and animal nose to tail, or you're eating all plant based.
Mm-hmm.
What matters is that it's whole food. You could be vegan and eating Coca-Cola and gummy bears.
Yeah.
You can be carnivore and having spam and hot dogs.
Mm,
Like, it's not necessarily healthy either way, just because you're carnivore, just because you're vegan.
so true.
What matters is that you're eating whole food. And when I see someone eat a well constructed whole food diet, whether you're carnivore, herbivore, omnivore, whatever, you can be extremely healthy.
Mm, super important. Yeah, it always fascinates me when someone says they're vegan, and I see them eating the what's the brand of the
Impossible burgers and
thank you, yeah. And it's like, if that's all you're eating, that's not really healthy eating. And same thing to your point with calling yourself a carnivore and only eating hot dogs, not a healthy way to do it. So I think the big key takeaway there is to simplify, to eat whole foods. And when I say simplify, I mean, it seems like people like to complicate whatever diet plan they put out there. And let's just get back to the basics. And
Mhm.
sometimes that's often overlooked. And then with fasting too, I think a lot of people that have not tried fasting before, they hear people talking about it and they get maybe a little intimidated, or they think, I can't go that long without eating. I love breakfast. I'm not going to give up my breakfast. And I was that person probably a year and a half to 2 years ago, where I was eating 4 or 5 meals a day. As soon as I woke up, I would eat breakfast, and I was snacking throughout the day, and I would eat late at night. I would eat right before bed. And then I started learning and researching and looking into the science of fasting, realizing how many great benefits it has. And then just started making small tweaks, just eat a little bit later in the day, shorten that eating window a little bit. And it can be done. It's really not as hard as you may think.
Yeah, exactly. It's called breakfast because that's when you break the fast. So you can make your break fast anytime you want. And when you're pairing it up with sleep, it becomes easier. So you already have like a hopefully 8 hour window of not eating. And then just adding a little bit more to it, like you're saying, like, not eating just prior to bed, because you need that post absorptive state to kind of get into parasympathetic and where you're resting and digesting, but not where you're like really eating and stimulating the body anymore. And then, on the other side in the morning, take a little time. You can start your body with like, start that circadian rhythm with, like having like morning coffee. I actually do decaf with MCTs and collagen, but then I don't actually eat anything until 11 or noon or something like that, and then I'm done eating around 6 p.m. and it gets dark, and that's when I'm done. And cutting out snacks, man, that's just, you'd be surprised at like how much you're snacking. You're like, I can't figure out why I can't keep this weight off, or why I feel tired all the time, and it's the constant snacking in between meals.
Exactly.
You can do like ad libitum meals. Like I believe, like, you don't have to be dieting. Just cutting out snacking, you will lose weight. You will
Yep.
get control of your appetite. That's one of the biggest things that you can do.
Yeah, so true. This was a question I wasn't necessarily planning on asking you, but I just had a friend ask me the other day what I think about coffee, and I personally love coffee. So of course, I came back to her and I said, the things that I'm learning and having conversations with people, it seems to be there's more benefits than not. And of course, it is a diuretic, so you got to make sure you're hydrating before you start drinking your coffee in the morning. But what are your thoughts overall on coffee? Good, bad, indifferent?
I think it really depends. I'm someone that doesn't metabolize caffeine that well, which is kind of ironic when I brought like all these energy ingredients, these methylxanthines out
Mm-hmm.
to the market.
Sure.
But that was part of my exploration, actually, of trying to figure out how I could have an energy ingredient that would work for me. But for me, I'm a slow metabolizer of caffeine, and it just does not work that well. There's genetic differences from person to person. Some people are the fast metabolizers, where they can, they're the people that say, oh, I have caffeine or coffee and I can go straight to bed.
Mm-hmm.
And they're really not getting the benefits of the caffeine, so to speak.
Yep.
And then some people that are slow metabolizers, the caffeine's hanging around forever, and it can take you 12 hours to process it, and it disturbs your sleep. And it's just, and then there's people that are in between. So I think it just depends from person to person. I will say, going back to the polyphenol discussion and some of the healthiest beverages, it does have antioxidants. It does have chlorogenic acid in particular. The compounds that are present in coffee are pretty amazing for your health as antioxidants and promoting health through that whole mitochondrial discussion we had and more. So I do like the idea of coffee. And then I think there's like a psychosomatic kind of thing that happens with coffee, where people smell it, they taste it, it becomes like a part of the morning. It becomes like a ritual that kind of goes further than just hot liquid triggering your circadian rhythm, like to get going. It's much deeper than that, much deeper rooted than that in our culture. And often, like, from person to person, when they smell the coffee, when they taste it, that's when they get going and wake up in the morning. It's not even the caffeine per se, it's more the ritual. So it's something to be mindful of, is that, if that's really important to you, like I said, I do decaf. Like, I don't necessarily think you need the caffeine. It's up to you. If you metabolize it well, cool. If you don't, and get rid of the caffeine, but you can keep the coffee, and you can even, biohack it by adding some collagen and I add some C8 MCTs, and
Mm-hmm.
I leave out the sweeteners, and it's good to go for me.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to know. I'm somebody that I can't have caffeine post noon, so I make
Hmm.
sure my last cup of coffee of regular coffee is it's before lunchtime. If I do, lately I have been having my last cup of coffee. I'll do half decaf, half regular, just
Yeah.
to kind of decrease that level of caffeine. Because I'm definitely somebody that will have a cup of coffee in the afternoon and be up, to the crazy hours of the morning, which is obviously not good.
Yeah.
Cool, Shawn. So this has been an awesome conversation. Before I get to my last question or two here, what else that we haven't covered, whether it's in your book or something that you've learned recently that you maybe want to touch on a little further?
A big one, I'll throw out a hack here, and this is as cheap as it gets and simple, and you might think it sounds crazy. I mean, maybe, you've probably heard of this, but some of your listeners might not have.
Hmm.
It's just mouth tape.
Yeah.
We're meant to be nasal breathers. Again, going back to our evolution, we're not meant to be mouth breathers. That's a backup system, like a break glass in case of emergency system. the moisture, the temperature, the filtration that happens with the nasal breathing is meant for you, is meant to be oxygenating to your tissues. And it changes your heart rate variability. It changes your being hypercapnic, like in terms of how much CO2 capacity you have, and therefore how much oxygen you can bring in. And it just changes everything. So you'd be surprised, like for me, when and this is even without people being like apneic. Obviously, if you're snoring, well, then this would be a massive game changer. Um, but if you're not snoring, even still, like for me, I went from, with 5 hours of sleep, it felt like I got 8 hours of mouth breathing sleep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a game changer. And then if you get a full night's sleep with mouth taping, and again, this is like you can get like there are mouth tape strips like that are specially made for this on
Right.
Amazon, but you
Yep.
can just buy like 3M paper tape,
Yep.
which is super cheap. And for me, that's what I use because I need longer strips because of my beard and facial hair.
Yep.
But I mean, for me, that was massive is to use that.
Yeah, sorry, my puppy's barking at me in the background. It's almost dinner time for her. But real quick on the mouth taping, it's something I've been doing for the last month now, and
Mhm.
I'm so happy you mentioned getting better quality of sleep from it because I've noticed general better quality of sleep. But same thing, I used to need at least 8 hours, maybe close to 9 hours of sleep, and that's when I was probably more mouth breathing. And
Mhm.
now I can get 5 6 hours of mouth taped sleep, and feel just as good, if not better. It's incredible stuff.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, very cool. So my last question I have for you, well, before we get to the last question, I know you talked about the book and the website to get that. Where else can people find you online? I know you're all over social. You're on Clubhouse now. Where can people go to learn more about you?
Yep, at Biohacking on Clubhouse, and I'm at Shawn Wells on Instagram, ShawnWells. I have a website that has tons of free guides on keto, on biohacking, on immune health, on my top 10 supplements, and all that kind of stuff that are fully cited on ShawnWells.com. And again, ShawnWells. And then, yeah, then energyformula.com for the book where you get all the free bonuses, and you can look at the hardcover or the ebook. The ebook's 99 cents with all those bonuses. And then hopefully maybe by June I'll have the Audible out.
Very cool. Looking forward to that. That's great. And like I said, I'll have that all linked up in the description here. My last question for you, Shawn, is who do you want to impact the most with the work that you do?
That's a great question because I feel like for the longest time I was just wanting to help the poor, the downtrodden. Like I worked in nursing homes and hospitals, and I felt like we were failing them. Like I was having to, like by law, I was having to give them, no added salt if they had hypertension. I had to give them carbs all day long if they're diabetic. I had to give them low fat if they had cardiovascular disease, on and on and on. Stuff that just doesn't make sense to me. And like the protein we were giving them was Ensure, which is just garbage protein with corn syrup solids. And it's very frustrating. And so that was my focus for a long time. But more recently, as I've became an entrepreneur myself and started working in some of these masterminds and entrepreneurial circles, and doing upstarts, and having equity in this company and that company, and doing private equity due diligence, and looking at businesses on a different level and working with high level entrepreneurs. I feel like that's where I've evolved to, because now I'm seeing that if I can impact them, I can impact a lot more people. And that's only become a newer thought to me. Like as I've kind of entered these circles, I'm like, wow, these people are impacting thousands, hundreds of thousands, millions of people. If I change their lives, if I help them with their self-care and self-love, then that's a game changer for millions of people. So that's the highest impact to me, is now doing that.
It's super cool. It's kind of like the teach a man to fish analogy, casting your net a little wider.
Yeah, exactly.
Very cool. Well, Shawn, thank you so much for everything that you've shared today. It's been an honor to speak with you and cover so many awesome topics. I feel like there's still so much more that I'd like to cover. Maybe we'll have to have you back on down the road after the book is launched.
Sounds
Very
good.
good.
Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it, Dan.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Shawn. Have a good one.
All right, you too.